Will, a university like Washington and Lee progresses by virtue of a strategic plan. I think shortly after you arrived, you set those wheels in motion. Talk with us a little bit about the plan, particularly the process by which it came to fruition.
Sure. I think of strategic planning as just an organized way for an institution to think about how it can become an even better version of itself. And one of the things I love best about Washington and Lee is our motto, non incautus futuri, not unmindful of the future, which to me means this is an institution that is rightly proud of what it already is and what it has been, but is always asking, how can we be a better version of ourselves? So to me, this is an institution that is kind of built for strategic planning.
We ought to be especially good at it, huh?
Yeah, and the last time a strategic plan was done was really at the beginning of Ken Ruscio's presidency, and that was then supported by the last fundraising campaign, and that plan accomplished a tremendous amount on behalf of the university. That plan had been done a dozen years ago and was essentially completed. And when I arrived, I found that there were a lot of people on campus already eagerly thinking about, how can we become a better version of ourselves.
Nobody was
waiting around for the president to show up, and so I didn't want to lose that momentum, and I just harnessed the momentum of the many people here who want to think about how can we improve, and created a process. So we had probably 100 people were directly involved on a variety of task forces and the steering committee that coordinated the work, and that included trustees and faculty members and students and senior administrators, and so that's kind of how the sausage was made, and those groups, of course, listened and talked to many other people, in the W&L community. So they delivered the final product to the board in May, and the board unanimously and enthusiastically endorsed it.
And perhaps a detail point, but is it always true that the strategic plan informs or frames a capital campaign of some size to follow? In other words, how do you accomplish the goals of the plan?
Yeah, I think that is almost always the case, and certainly will be the case this time. The plan is really a guidebook for the next decade at W&L. Opportunities to get even better to the greatest extent possible over the next decade, and of course, some of that requires some funding. So
right. Many of us were left a bit breathless by Michael Bloomberg's recent gift to Johns Hopkins.
Yeah.
If I have it correct, the primary purpose of the gift, if not the only purpose, was to enable Hopkins to go to fully need-blind admissions.
Right.
That is also a part of the Washington and Lee strategic plan. What does that mean,
Right.
and why is it important to you and to this university?
Yeah, need-blind admission means that your admissions office, when it considers applications, can and does consider them solely on the basis of the talents and the character of the applicants, and pays no attention or consideration at all to the family's financial circumstances. And so it's really about being purely attentive to what applicants can contribute to the university and how they can benefit from the university, and selecting kids based on their merits and not on how much money their parents have. And it is sort of the gold standard of the greatest colleges and universities in this country, because talented students are the lifeblood of these institutions.
If you want talent, you have to look for them
Yeah.
as broadly as possible,
That's
and,
right.
and make it possible for them to come.
That's right. And so Michael Bloomberg's gift is extraordinary. He gave more than $1 billion to Johns Hopkins University, and you're right, it was all for need-based financial aid to make it possible for that university to become need-blind in admission, and that's a real credit to him and great fortune for Johns Hopkins. Washington and Lee is in stronger financial position than Johns Hopkins, so we are not nearly that far away from being need blind.
I hope not.
we probably need about another $130 million in endowment, and we will accomplish that so that we too can every single time admit kids based on their talent and character.
I think there would be a direct connection between these issues and something that you wrote about in a column you submitted to the Washington Post just last week, specifically the number of Pell eligible students at Washington and Lee.
Yeah.
What is that, and how do you use that to measure how we're doing as a university?
Right. So the Pell grant is a federal grant program available to low-income families. And so one of the standard measures of how colleges and universities are doing with respect to socioeconomic diversity is what is the percentage of students who are eligible for the Pell grant. Okay. And I did publish a piece in the Washington Post last Friday talking about the progress that W&L has made on that front in the last 4 years, which has been significant. We've gone from 6% to 10% to 12% to 14% over the last 4 years, and very pleased about that because, again, it is all about talent. There are a lot of dimensions to diversity. There are a lot of different types of diversity that benefit the educational mission of the school. Mm-hmm. And W&L has as a strength political diversity. We have a rich variety of political views among our students, which is a great benefit to them, I think, in their experiences learning from each other.
Some survey or poll came out about that not too long ago, right?
Yeah, graduating seniors here and at other colleges and universities are surveyed about all kinds of things when they graduate, and so we know from those national surveys that our students are 20% more likely than students at similar schools to spend meaningful time with friends who have significantly different political opinions. And I think that's a really important and good thing. Racial diversity and socioeconomic diversity have not been the strength of this place, and I think it is important that we make progress in those dimensions of diversity in order to benefit the education of every single person here. You know, if you're teaching a philosophy class, the class is better if the conversations are enriched by students coming to the table with a wider variety of perspectives and life experiences that inform what they have to contribute.
Likewise, out of the classroom on teams and in clubs.
Absolutely. Casual conversation in dorm rooms and in fraternity houses and playing fields. Absolutely. I think having a student body and a faculty that are more diverse in many different respects is central to our educational mission.